64 and 66. Motorcycle accident. It's 2 witnesses already. Lee Bowers is on a railroad tower. He has the whole assassination in front of him. He tells the Warren Commission about 2 men down here by the overpass atop the grassy knoll. They're watching the motorcade come down. Kennedy comes around. He's asked, well, were they still there behind the fence? And he says, no, one of them was in the bushes, the one in the plaid shirt. You couldn't see too well because of the plaid shirt. And the other stocky older man was there. Then he's about to say something, and the Warren Commission cuts him off. Lee Bowers dies. Okay, another 1-car accident. So that's 3 right there. 4th, remember I mentioned the guy at Lincoln Mercury, the salesman? He's got to go too. He saw the Lee Harvey Oswald look-alike. He told the Warren Commission all about it. You can't have 2 Oswalds because you got a conspiracy. He dies, suicide in his car, the exhaust coming into the car, 66. Now we've got about 24 citizens dying, and they don't even know why they're dying. Well, they're being murdered by Richard Helms. He figures he did it. He's untouchable, he's director, but let me clean up in case this stuff comes back to bite me on the ass. And he does a real good job of it because there's hardly any witnesses from 64 who can testify to the House Select Committee in 77. They can't find any. I mean, that's not that many years. So he did a good job of covering up. 68, why it's Richard Helms again. Robert Kennedy is assassinated. Well, if you're Richard Helms and you killed his brother, you don't want the same guy in there. He's going to put in the same programs. Also, he's coming after you. Robert Kennedy becomes president. He's going to find out who killed his brother, which is Richard Helms. Fortunately for Helms, they instituted Project MKUltra, which is really funny. When I was reading those documents and kind of sad, I come across these documents from the Senate Select Committee on Health. They say in 74, 75, they're asking the ex-CIA Director Helms about Project MKUltra, a Manchurian candidate brainwashing program designed to program assassins. He said, well, I remember something about it, but I don't remember any details. Gottlieb ran it. Why don't you ask him? They go to Sidney Gottlieb, ask him. He says, well, my memory's kind of fuzzy too. And the Senate Select Committee is really, really angry because they're saying these guys supposedly know stuff and they're not telling them it. What happens is Stansfield Turner becomes director of CIA in 76 under Jimmy Carter. Great man, probably saved the country. Probably saved the country because he knew what was going on back in the Kennedy administration and he fired hundreds of CIA agents. I suspect the same ones who were involved in Kennedy's assassination and whatever other mayhem they were doing. So I think Stansfield Turner is a great unsung hero. But what happens is they find documents on Project MKUltra, Freedom of Information Act. It had been misplaced. It was supposed to be destroyed. So they read the documents and they find out that Richard Helms in January 1963 ordered destruction of all Project MKUltra paperwork. Same Helms that says he doesn't know anything. But they got enough paperwork to find that it was Richard Helms in 1953 who proposed this Manchurian candidate program. His proposals in 1953 mirror what happens to Sirhan Sirhan. Sirhan, as you may or may not know, doesn't remember going to the Ambassador Hotel. He doesn't remember shooting Senator Kennedy. He says, I must have did it because everyone says I did it. How do you not remember shooting the senator, unless you have some form of amnesia? Let me just show you what Richard Helms proposed back in 1953. And they worked on it, for all those years. A little bit more about Sirhan Sirhan. I read the LA summary reports on Robert Kennedy's assassination. Sirhan Sirhan is seen in the company of a gorgeous woman at the Pasadena City College. First girlfriend he ever had, and last. She's seen with him again the day before Robert Kennedy is shot. Target practice with Sirhan, the blonde, and Sirhan's older brother. She's seen at the Ambassador Hotel. Sandra Serrano saw her. She's seen coming in with Sirhan. She's seen by other people in the pantry. Sirhan's with a nice, attractive woman, they say, and another guy in a suit. And then, of course, he has amnesia, right? Here's what Richard Helms was trying to do back in 53. This material could potentially aid in discrediting individuals, eliciting information, and implanting suggestions and other forms of mental control. Here's what he really wants to do, though, in Helm's project. He wants to research materials which will render the induction of hypnosis easier or otherwise enhance its usefulness, materials and physical methods which will produce amnesia for events preceding and during their use, substances which alter structures in such a way that the tendency of the recipient to become dependent on another person. That's Sirhan. What they do on this Project MKUltra, and they may still be doing it for all I know, they get these guys who, maybe they're incipient schizophrenics, I don't know, but they give them a girlfriend. First girlfriend they ever have. The girlfriend draws them into Project MKUltra, where all these other things are applied, which is going to give them amnesia. Then the guys come in and they start shooting at the target on command, but you got a real assassin who's actually shooting the target. But it's beautiful because you're the one who's going to get blamed. You're going to take the fall. The guy's dead. Everything's nice and neat. So when I look at Richard Helms, I see the man who organized President Kennedy's assassination. First, he's there. He's running the agency. Second, he's not telling the director anything about what's important going on. Third, he's lying to Robert Kennedy about trying to kill Castro. Fourth, 1953, he's the father of Project MKUltra. All these deaths of American citizens fall under his watch. And then we have Robert Kennedy's assassination. When you all add it together, this is the guy who had to have done it, at least organized it. But from the CIA's point of view, they want to get rid of Kennedy because he's going to break up their autonomy. In '64, he's going to come in, go to the American people. This is what they've been doing. We cannot allow this to happen. He's going to get either abolish the agency or reorganize it. But he wants to wait till he's elected. He wants the power of that second presidency since he barely won the first time around. And they know it. So it's imperative that they assassinate Kennedy before he's reelected, just to protect their asses. And all the stuff that Kennedy knew in '61, '62, and '63, Congress doesn't learn until '75. But then they start putting it together. That's why you have the House Select Committee reinvestigating Kennedy's assassination, because of all the stuff they found out about the CIA. Now, while Kennedy's battling the CIA for control of foreign policy, he's also battling his own military. The Bay of Pigs, yeah, it's a problem. It's too early in his administration to be really upset with him, but he's upset with the military. Someone should have told him this is not going to work. He has a reassessment done, and what he does after the reassessment, he never trusts the military again. So when they do give him good information, let's go attack Castro during the Cuban Missile Crisis, he's prone to do the opposite of what they tell him, you know, which is kind of funny to me. But throughout '61 and '62, he's reorganizing the armed forces. He's not paying attention to the generals. He's doing a lot of innovation. He's taking troops out of Europe. He wants Europe to pay their fair share of their own defense instead of us all the time. He's going for guerrilla warfare. He has a policy, no, we're not going to have a nuclear war with the Russians if they invade West Europe. That violates the standing policy. But things really come to a crunch and cost him his life during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's October '62, our guys are screaming, we have to invade. They're putting nuclear missiles on the island. If you're not going to invade now, when are you? It's a good excuse to get rid of Castro at the same time. Let's stand up to the Russians. And he may do that, but he wants that to be the last option. So he tries some other options with the quarantine, and it works. But when Kennedy didn't do what the Joint Chiefs wanted, it's in the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis, in my analysis, when the military says, okay, to the CIA, go ahead and hit him. You're right, he's a national security risk. And further, in '63, everything that the military is afraid of comes to pass, starting with the nuclear test ban treaty. I see Kennedy's really trying to pass this nuclear test ban treaty. No more bombs in the atmosphere, no more advanced nuclear delivery systems, no missiles in outer space. Over the objections of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. How do I know? I read their testimony to the Armed Services Committee the year before. Every one of those guys was adamant about Congress not passing this nuclear test ban treaty. because it was going to put the U.S. in jeopardy. But Kennedy went on television, pressured Congress by pressuring the people to pass it. That's another nail in his coffin right there. As we go into 63, he's thinking twice about Vietnam. He's getting us in it. More and more troops are going over there. He won't let draftees go, though. You have to be regular Army to go to Vietnam in 61, 62, and 63. He sends someone he trusts, Mike Mansfield, over to Vietnam in the spring of 63. I've read the Mansfield report. It's a report on Southeast Asia. Mansfield is a trusted friend. He comes back with reports saying $1 billion, a year later and $1 billion, South Vietnam is even worse than it was the year before. The government doesn't have the support of the people. The government is entirely corrupt. If this ever becomes an instance where it's going to become an American war and not a Vietnamese war, we have every right and responsibility to get out. Kennedy reads this report. That's a little summary of it, but Mansfield is very specific. Kennedy reads the report, and that's when he really starts having second doubts about getting out of Vietnam. I see that he decides to get out of Vietnam. A couple things. There's a press conference late in the summer of 63. And Diem's brother says, oh, there's too many Americans over here. Kennedy's pissed off. We got 4 guys dying every week over there. And all the money we're spending. And this guy's saying there's too many Americans? So he goes on TV and says, you know what, anytime they want us out, just tell us, I'll withdraw the troops immediately. I repeat, I will withdraw the troops immediately. In September, he has an interview with Walter Cronkite, just from his public papers. Cronkite asked him about Vietnam, and he says, it's important that we're over there, but it's a Vietnamese war. We'll give them supplies, we'll give them any support we can, but it has to be the South Vietnamese against the communists. And that's his last thinking on Vietnam. I'm reading all the newspapers of the time period when Kennedy's assassinated, so I'm coming across articles saying in various newspapers, 1,000 troops ordered withdrawn from Vietnam, home by Christmas, 63, rest to follow by 65, early 65. Kennedy's pulling the troops out right when he's getting assassinated. So the military, in their minds, I'm sure they didn't wait till 63 to okay the CIA hit of Kennedy. I'm pretty sure it's after the Cuban Missile Crisis. Kennedy thinks these guys are crazy. These guys think Kennedy's weak. But in any event, they give the okay. So now we got 2 branches that are going against Kennedy. CIA to protect their autonomy, military to protect the American people. They think he's a national security risk. But there's a third category that no one talks about. It's his battle with his own rich, with the economic elite. I call him economic elite. In 61, it's just a standard fare, Democrat president, consumerism, not letting mergers happen that are not in the public interest, stopping monopolies, all the stuff that economic elite like to do. That's how they get rich on monopolies. Let's see, I have it. At the end of 61, and I'm reading all the business magazines, right, comparing what Kennedy's doing at the time period. 1961, at the end of 61. Again and again, on every article throughout 61 and 62 is anti-Kennedy from U.S. News and World Report. They're digging on him, and they're trying to influence public opinion is what they're doing, unsuccessfully. But you can tell how much business hates him. They're concerned about Kennedy appointing key men, investor-owned utility enterprises, wide variety of investigations, everything from the stock market price and labeling, okay?